the percentage of men with at least 6 close friends has fallen by half since 1990. And men today are 5x more likely to say they don't even have a single close friend than they were 30 years ago. What is your experience of forming and sustaining friendships today? Dude, same. Honestly not sure who I would ask to be a best man. I have a lot of acquaintances and previous friends, but having moved a lot, and sucking at keeping in touch, I do not have many close friends. Honestly, my closest friends are internet friends who I chat with daily on Discord but haven't ever met IRL. I'm not sad about this though. Honestly, I live a very fulfilling life. It does hurt a bit when I see my old high school friends, and like literally all of them still hang out. I guess I just left, traveled for opportunity and moved on and focused on my career way more than they did. At least that's what I tell myself. I'm very lucky that after I landed back in my hometown again after college, my estranged best friends from middle school were willing and interested in readopting me back into the group. That was 15 years ago. We still talk often, play online D&D once a week, and try to meet up in person at least once a month. I've gone on trips with them, officiated their weddings, and been present, or at least on the premises, for the birth of their children. But I'm definitely aware of how lucky I am to have this group of friends. I honestly can't think of any non-work related friendships I've made as an adult that stuck, and I sometimes wonder what my life would have been like if I hadn't stumbled back into this network. Probably much worse. If you want a friend, be a friend. It takes time, experience and bonding. A lot of people have no friends because they receive what they give. Law of attraction is a true thing when it comes to this type of stuff. I've been hurt a lot, it's true, but the few friends I do have I've known forever and would count on them for almost anything. Edit. And despite their emotional shit and sometimes petty nonsense, I still like them and care about them, and we know we can count on one another. That's friendship. As a nearly 40-year-old fairly introverted male with probably 20+ men and ladies whom I would consider very close friends, who are not workmates or relatives, I'm going to give those who relate to this some critical advice here. Number 1, shared interests. Finding your community. The crux here is that friendships need a foundation of commonality. Friendships simply do not materialize out of thin air. They absolutely must be based on some kind of mutual interest, experience, or history. Some of us, myself included, are lucky to have childhood friends. In my case, this includes 2 people, brothers, with whom I've maintained a long-term friendship. We have nothing shared except our upbringing, but related to the above, it's enough of a foundation that it has sustained a connection for us over nearly 23 years. But for many, childhood or friendships from youth dissolve quickly, so you need something else to build friendships on, and find a community with other folks who share this foundation. This brings me to number 2. Number 2, what are you interested in? Okay, a bunch of people are going to immediately reply with I don't have any interests. I'm calling bullshit. Everyone has interests. The vast majority simply never act on them, typically because people, falsely, think that they can't act on them. But an interest is simply something you find interesting. Have you ever watched something on TV, like sailing, and thought this is cool? Well, that's an interest. You probably have many interests, and I guarantee that one of them is at least somewhat captivating to you in some way. Using our example, you may think it is impossible to get into sailing, but if you are someone who thinks sailing is the most amazing thing, then what is preventing you from going from someone interested in sailing to someone who actually does sail is your willingness to take the necessary steps to learn about it, and figure out how people get into it and do it yourself. You will quickly find there is a huge sailing community with meetups, and events, and all kinds of interface points where you can meet like-minded people. You will also probably find that it's not nearly as prohibitive to get into sailing as you once thought. For example, a friend of mine bought a full-size sailboat for $12,000 and now does it every summer. Sailing might be a bad example because it's probably on the difficult end of things to get into, but there are a million free or cheap activities that you could try. I won't list them, but there are thousands. All of those activities are backed by massive communities with meetups, groups, online forums, all kinds of ways to interface with people, and these communities are often extremely inviting of new people. Number 3. Be patient. Okay, so you found an activity, attended a few meetups. This means you have a bunch of close friends, right? Friendships take a lot of time to develop, so you must understand boundaries, and respect the boundaries of those around you. Do not force friendships by being overbearing, overcommunicative, or invading people's boundaries in any way. This goes triple for members of the opposite sex. Do allow friendships to develop naturally over time. They always do. It just takes longer than you think. Most of my current best friends took 5 years going from first introduction to feeling like they are in the realm of good, much less close friends. Do not expect that everyone you meet is your friend. This goes with letting friendships develop naturally over time. Lots of people that I've developed acquaintances with have simply remained acquaintances, and that's okay. It's great to catch up with these people when I see them every so often, with no pressure for it to be any more than that. Do be comfortable with acquaintances. Understand that 99% of the people you meet, even those with mutual interests, will only ever be acquaintances, and that's entirely okay. Do not let interactions get awkward. If you strike up a conversation with someone, that doesn't mean it has to last any longer than a minute or even less. Maybe a quick comment on something. Hey, that's a nice sailboat. You had it long? Yeah, about 5 years. Wow, that's great. She's a real beaut. I'm C250586 by the way. Cool. I'm Jim Bob. Nice to meet you, Jim Bob. See you around. Brief interaction, quick intro, and then end the conversation before you run out of things to talk about and it gets awkward. That's it. Do let shared experiences develop into conversations with people. Remember Jim Bob? Well, maybe a few weeks later you run into him again. Oh hey Jim Bob. Great to see you again. Wow, did you see Spray Lord's yacht in the bay at the last meetup? Impressive rig. Yeah. Great to see you again. Yeah. What an impressive boat. A bit small for a Saudi prince though, don't you think? Sure do. Been able to take your rig out much lately? Not really. Hoping to this week though. That's great. Weather looks prime. Hey, great to see you again. Hope you enjoy your trip. Number 4. Take an interest in others first, but don't expect people to take an interest in you. Okay, this is a critical one. You must show an interest in others, and simply create space for them to show an interest in you. This does two main things. It shows them you care. It gives people an opportunity to show they care about you, or are the kind of people who take an interest in others too. Remember Jim Bob? Maybe the third interaction goes like this. Hey Jim Bob, great to see you. Did you manage to get out on your sailing trip? How was it? Hey, thanks for asking. I did get out. I went to the Bermuda Triangle and conversation. By remembering that Jim Bob had a plan to take a trip, you show him that you cared enough to remember his plans, and cared enough to ask him how it went. Now, this conversation could go one of two ways. Awkward silence. Well, great to hear about your trip. Hope to bump into you again. Jim Bob didn't really make an effort to ask about you. Either he isn't interested, that's okay, but try to read the room on this, or he's socially awkward and isn't sure how to ask. Not always easy to read, but if after a few interactions Jim Bob hasn't really asked about you, or shown an interest in your life, read the room, and simply avoid more interactions. Jim Bob might see you one time and remember that you showed an interest but then gave them space, and he might initiate an interaction. Or not. And if Jim Bob isn't showing any interest on interaction, simply avoid, and move on to other people. Or maybe, instead of awkward silence, Jim Bob responds, thanks for asking. How about you? Have you been out sailing much? Well, I'm just learning about it to be honest. I'd love to get my own sailboat eventually, but right now I'm just attending these meetups to meet some folks, and learn all I can. Hey, that's great. Would you like to have a look on board mine? Maybe take a quick rip around the bay? Sure, thanks, Jim Bob offered. And maybe over time, Jim Bob becomes a friend. But even offering to give you a tour doesn't mean he's your best friend or even friend. Just an acquaintance. Give it time, and maybe over weeks, months, or years, Jim Bob will become a good friend. Number 5. Respect boundaries. Friends come and go. This is the hard part for so many people. Friendships come and go. It's okay, it's natural, and you have to let it happen. Maybe over time, Jim Bob finds a girl, they get married and have 5 kids. His priorities will shift. If you struggle with boundaries and change, this could feel isolating and scary. But in the meantime, you should have been building other friendships and acquaintances, and not focusing all your attention on Jim Bob. Because people change, lives change, and you have to be able to move on and find new groups of friends as time goes on. Do not cling to friends or force attention. Respect boundaries. Understand no one owes you anything, especially your best friends. Maybe Jim Bob's wife needs his attention now, or his kids. This doesn't make Jill Bob a bitch. It's just how life goes, and your friendship with Jim Bob will actually have a much higher chance of surviving, or even deepening if you are able to give Jim Bob space, respect, and respect Jill Bob's wishes. Maybe in time, Jill Bob will also become a friend. Anyways, I hope this How to Make Friends guide helps someone. Good luck. I'm going to be 70 this year. The kids stay in touch. Brother ... We talk once or twice a year. One cousin once a month. Old GF usually once or twice a month. Close to being it. Was getting to know a neighbor but he died. Live out in a small town and people tend to be extreme right. City about an hour away. Not fond of driving there since my vehicle gets 15 miles per gallon on premium. Not in touch with anyone I went to school with or worked with. Old schoolmates that used live within an hour or 2 drive reacted with horror at trying to meet. Do not worry about it anymore. Work around the house and yard. Reddit. Read a lot. Thinking back, I had friends younger. Dating and then married, it became her friends. Not accusing you of anything, just semi-hijacking to bring up a point. This is the sort of situation that conspiracy theory / cult / white supremacy, etc. recruiters go after, guys desperate for a group to belong to and contribute to. They scoop these guys up, subject them to a little tiny bit of mental manipulation they're completely blindsided to, and before you know it they'll be terrorizing women and black people just to fit in with the guys who laugh at his jokes and buy him beers. I just want to say this, because I've seen people I know lost to this, as they were in the same boat and were taken advantage of. I can't help them, they're too far gone. But hopefully I can mention it here and guys like this reading this can be made aware. I hope this doesn't get buried. It will, but if it helps at least one person, it'll be worth it. My trick is to do the same things at the same time. Be the guy who sits at the corner of the bar and always drinks a rum and coke at the same bar most Friday nights. Be the guy who sits at the library on Saturday mornings reading non-fiction books about Europe. Be the guy who orders a caramel macchiato at the local cafe every Sunday morning. Be the dude doing squats at the gym every Sunday evening. This is stuff I do, but whatever your pleasure. You get the idea. Do this regularly, and you'll start seeing the same patrons, employees over and over, and eventually they'll start to recognize you and be comfortable with your presence. I made friends with a dude at the bar who also seemed to be there every Friday night, and saying was as simple as, "Hey, you're here again too? Mind if I sit with you?" And we hit it off. One of the librarians saw me coming in and said hi, and mentioned the library had a book club, and since she saw me reading a lot, she mentioned they were looking for new members. I didn't join because I don't have the time, but that would have been like 5+ potential new friends there. All too often, people give advice about getting out of your comfort zone or try something new. In my experience, you don't need to reinvent yourself as a person, you just need to create routine that shows strangers what your interests are and invites them to join. 26M. Work in a field that has mostly older people in my office. Work friends only stay around for work. Too many times they have moved on and never made contact. Friends from school days all fell out. In the world of 9-5, with trying to think about the future, dedicating time to a partner, house, chores etc. I find it difficult to even give myself time to have any kind of hobby, let alone try and find some avenue to connect with someone and build a friendship. Even online gaming isn't what I was back when I was 13 and people would party up and make friends online. It's sad and I think about it quite a lot. Recently got a dog and this is probably the least lonely I have felt in 7 or so years. It's hard, but the thought of finding people who don't just leave you immediately seems like a long shot. 10 years ago I had a handful of close friends. As of right now I'm down to one, and in all honesty it's just because my best friend and I live together. We get along real well and this situation allows us both to live in relative comfort as opposed to living all alone. If we didn't live this way we probably wouldn't be as close because the same thing would happen that's happened with the rest of my friends. We just all have busy lives and it just becomes harder and harder to maintain a friendship that is consistent enough to keep things ongoing. People just don't have time anymore. My friend and I are lucky in a sense. Yeah, from day one to today, I don't think I've ever had a close friend, like a confidant for the deepest of talk or you'd wanna call it, that theme not being in the social environment of school or college anymore. I don't even maintain a social life at all outside of family. I think, personally, it's some kind of anxiety of having to maintain them and make efforts, commitments to maintain them. Even deeper than that, I think it's not feeling like I get much emotionally out of them in the first place. I can socialize perfectly fine, and my life hasn't really degraded at all. I think I've been desensitized to a lack of social contact. Not a good thing. I know a lot of people who see it this way. It almost becomes a game or a chore for some folks after getting burned by bad friends. I know if I text or call 4 or 5 people, they will answer within an hour. And that's not even family. But I also see close friends as family because of how isolated I was age-wise in my family. I was an only child, didn't have neighbors my age until I was 12, and the only cousins my age I only saw on holidays. So for me a close friend was a brother or sister. In college I always considered that core group of 6 people my family. We ate most meals together, played games, went to movies, etc., all that family stuff. After college I still kept contact and always tried to have at least 4 or 5 people I talked to regularly because in 20-30 years it's just gonna be me really, other than my wife, her family and my kid. And I internalized that idea when I was probably 11-12, because even then I could see how the future might look. So I have slowly built a non-blood related family of brothers, sisters, and cousins to various degrees. It is odd, I hadn't had a great many close friendships until COVID, when I became more lonely and decided to put effort into that. Getting something out of it was something I had to learn. The pressure tells you to be your best person, to take notes, remember inside jokes, to know what questions to ask, when to stay silent, etc. While all that social hygiene is quite important, though, it shouldn't be the meat. I learned to relax and share my own thoughts with close friends where once I thought that pointless. And now I'm more responsive to my own desires and feelings. I learned to get invested in other folks as you might a book, and actually be interested in their updates, and other crap, like going to the gym or switching careers. It's a more active lifestyle, a change in how you interact with the world that might not feel worth it on the bad days, but a good change. For me it's like, I already find it relatively easy to spend 8 hours a day with work and then the rest of the day devoted to unwinding, working out, eating, etc., and then 8 hours sleeping. On the weekends I could put in more effort, but these days being social means a ton of drinking, which just makes everything harder to handle. Plus I like the weekends to relax and chill out. I find my life to be incredibly uncluttered and carefree this way. I don't find myself needing to spend a ton of time talking to people cause I fill the hours without any difficulty, so really if I did spend more time making friends I'd have to give something up about my current life. Now if I had a girlfriend it would be different.